Hello, this video is on informational text standards in preschool and kindergarten in New Jersey. I'm Muriel Rand from New Jersey City University. When we're teaching informational text, it's easy to get lost in the content and forget that you're teaching reading and not the content of the book. So what you want to do in working with informational text is to first identify the standard that you want to work on, and then identify the reading strategy that standard includes. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. And then you're going to model that strategy for the students, have the students practice the strategy, and then assess their progress on the strategy. So even though you will be obviously interdisciplinary, you might be teaching science or social studies or some other topics along with the book, the main purpose of a teaching informational text lesson is to teach a reading strategy. What you want to do is teach the kids what good readers do when they use informational text. So for this video, I'm going to go through each of the standards for preschool and kindergarten in New Jersey and give you examples of what the strategies are that you would be teaching. So the first reading informational strategy or standard is RI1, and that is ask and answer questions. The standard says, with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about key details in a text. And the kindergarten standard adds the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Now, when you're reading these standards, remember that these standards tell you what the student should be able to do, not what you are going to do. So a lot of people use this standard and then they have the teacher asking questions. That's not the purpose of this standard. It's to teach students to ask and answer questions while they're listening to or reading a text. So what we know is that good readers ask and answer questions while they're reading. They're engaged in the book. So they're thinking to themselves, what will happen next? Why did she do that? Where will she go next? Who is this character? What is she like? Or, where do whales live? But how big are they? Who do they fight with? Those are the kind of questions that good readers think about while they're reading. And we need to model this for the students, and we need to make sure that they are getting the opportunity to ask and answer their own questions. So again, model for them how you ask and answer questions while you're reading, and then give students the opportunity to ask and answer questions while they are listening to a text or reading it on their own. RI2 is to recall important facts from a text. So with prompting and support, recall important facts from a familiar text. So you're going to teach students first how informational books work, because in order to recall important facts, you need to know that informational texts have facts, right? So the first thing is that the purpose of this book is for us to learn facts. And then teach them how to recall important facts in a book. If you're using a book like this one on a butterfly's life, and all you're doing is just having them identify the different stages in a butterfly, you're teaching a science lesson. But if you're teaching them how they're going to get facts from this book, then you're teaching a reading lesson. So we know that good readers, they look at the pictures. You notice some kids are like staring off into space. They're not even paying attention to the book. So good readers look at the pictures. They make personal connections. Oh, that looks like the butterfly that I saw in my yard last year. And they listen for facts and for interesting information. They listen to what they might be interested in, or what they might have questions about, what they might be curious about. So we need to model how you get facts from a book. You can't just assume the kids know how to do this. Kids who have read a lot of books at home and who have parents who've taught them this might know how to do it. But most kids don't know how to get facts from a book. So your job is not to teach the content. It's not to teach about butterflies. Your lesson should not be, today we're going to learn about butterflies. Your lesson should be, today we're going to learn about how to get facts from a book. And you're going to want them to use this strategy with many different texts. You can tell that you're teaching a reading lesson rather than a science lesson by whether students could use the strategy you're teaching them with this book or with many different books. The next standard is RI3, which is connecting ideas in a book. So with prompting and support, describe the connection between two individuals, events, ideas, or pieces of information in a text. So you're going to teach children that informational books have topics that relate to each other. It's not just a string of facts. The different facts are connected to each other. So you're going to model how the information in books is connected. So you might say something like, see how these pages are all about where whales live? Like the last 3 pages we read about where they live. And now these pages are all about what whales eat. You can see that these facts are connected because they're all about what whales eat. And the last section is all about what whales look like. So you can see that these are facts about what whales look like. They are grouped together and they're connected, but they're all about whales. So what we know is that good readers make connections between the ideas in an informational text. So again, no matter what you're reading about, let's look at how the information in this book, how the information is connected to each other. If you were reading the book about butterflies, it would be, well, let's see how this page is connected to this page. Oh, look, the butterfly started out as a caterpillar and now it's in a chrysalis. So can you see how those are connected? This one happens first and then this one happens next. That's how informational books work. The ideas are connected to each other in the book. RI.4 is unknown words in a text. So with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about unknown words in a text. So teach the children basically how to use the context of the book to figure out what words mean. What does waste mean? Well, let's look at the pictures to figure it out. What do you see in these pictures? What do you think people might be wasting, or what is a waste? We can look at the pictures to find out, or we can read the rest of the page to get clues. Let's read what it says on, let's read the words and see if we can figure out what waste means. Or we can ask someone what the words mean. If I'm reading a story and you don't understand a word, you can raise your hand and say, Ms. Smith, can you tell me what does waste mean? Or I don't understand what that means. Or if you're reading on your own, you can ask a teacher or a friend what a word means. So model using this strategy when you read, stop and say, I wonder what that means. And then model how you can use the book to figure out what a word means. And as you're reading to the children, make sure that you have them identify words that they don't understand and practice using these strategies. We don't want kids to get the idea that, oh, if you don't know a word, so what? We want them to be curious and to pay attention to whether they're really understanding or not. It's a way of monitoring their comprehension, self-monitoring their comprehension. RI.5 is about text structure. So in preschool, it's just identify the front and back cover of a book. And in kindergarten, identify the front cover, back cover, and the title of a book. Preschoolers and kindergartners can do this very easily. You're going to teach the children how to identify the different parts. As they get up through the grades, in first grade, they learn how to differentiate between informational text and literature in this standard. And in second grade, in RI5, they learn about the structure of different texts. So for example, stories are structured with first, next, and last, and informational texts are structured by topics. So, but for right now in preschool and kindergarten, they're just learning kind of about how books work, basically. RI6 is author's purpose, and we want them to name the author and illustrator of a text and define the role of each in presenting the ideas or information. So what information do we get from the author and what information do we get from the illustrator? Teach the different purposes that authors might have for writing. So they might not have even thought about the fact that the author's role is to help you learn something. So first we have to teach what an author does. And it's not just write the words, right? The author gathers all the information and presents it to us. The author decides what facts to include. The author decides what order to put those in. So I see a lot of preschool teachers that just teach them that the author writes the words. It's so much more than that. So really get deeply into what authors do. And of course, this is going to link to your writing standards, because the best way to teach them what an author does is to have them become an author. And you can use a book and say, how do you think that Aliki wrote this book about my 5 senses? What decisions do you think he made when he was writing this book? And then maybe you can write a book about your five senses and think about what you would have to put in your book. And then we can teach the role of the illustrator. And it's a little bit different in literature and informational text. Again, you could do this by looking at the book. What do you think the Aliki wanted to show you with this picture? Why did he put this picture in? What do you think this picture does? So you're teaching them about lots of different books and how the author and the illustrator work, not just about one book. RI7 is about how the illustrations and the text connect. So you can see how this goes with RI6, right? So with prompting and support, tell how the illustrations support the text in an informational text. And in kindergarten, they add what person, place, thing, or idea in the text an illustration depicts. So you're not just teaching about illustrations. This standard is not about illustrations. This standard is about how the illustrations and the text go together. Why is this helpful? Because what good readers do is that when they're reading, if they don't understand something, they're going to look at the pictures to help them understand. So again, teach how the illustrations connect to what the words say. What do the illustrations show us? How do the pictures or the photographs relate to the words? What words do you think this illustration goes with? And how does looking at the illustrations help us understand the text? And you might have them draw a picture that goes along with your words. Drawing a picture alone won't teach this standard. It's the picture that goes along with the words. So again, we're connecting the idea that illustrations and texts go together. RI8 doesn't apply to preschool and kindergarten, but RI9 is just for kindergarten, and it's about comparing texts. So this is not a preschool standard, although I think it's very appropriate to do in preschool, even though it's technically not a preschool standard. Basically, what we're going to do is identify the basic similarities and differences between two texts on the same topic. So, if you were in creative curriculum and you're studying buildings, you could have different books about buildings. If you were studying clothing, you could have different books about clothing and examine those different books. Here, I've got two different books about community helpers. And we're going to see what's the same and what's different. So how is this book on butterflies similar to the book we read yesterday? What did we learn from book 1? What did we learn from book 2? What was the same in the two books? What information was different? So you're going to model how to compare these texts and perhaps use a graphic organizer to help the students learn what's similar in the two texts and what might be different. And this is also going to prepare them for research. So this prepares them for the writing standard of research. So you can see a lot of how the writing standards and the reading standards connect. Finally, RI.10 is about active engagement during read-alouds. In pre-K, the standard says actively participate in read-aloud experiences using age-appropriate information books individually and in small and large groups. And in kindergarten, it says actively engage in group reading activities with purpose and understanding. So just reading a book is not enough to meet this standard, because reading the book does not mean that your kids are engaged. This standard is about teaching children how to be engaged while you are reading. So you have to teach the students how to participate in read-alouds or group reading activities. Think about what behaviors will help them pay attention and teach those behaviors. What should their body be doing? What should their mind be doing? How can they ask or answer questions? What should they be looking at? This might include teaching them how to do a turn and talk or making connections to the book. But we want to practice these behaviors with many books and texts. So again, if you were writing a lesson plan on RI10, your lesson plan is going to be about the behaviors that they should be using while you're reading. The lesson plan is not about the book. The lesson plan is about how the kids are engaged in the book. So in summary, when you're working with the reading informational text standards, remember that you are teaching strategies. You are teaching reading strategies. You are not teaching the book. You are teaching strategies that they're going to use with the book, but you're not teaching the content of the book. So just using a book does not make it a reading lesson. You want to model and practice what good readers do, and you want to use all of these standards throughout the year. I really like a curriculum that actually track this so that you can make sure that you've covered them all. So again, teach the strategies. Just using a book doesn't make it a reading lesson. You're teaching them how to be a good reader when you're using the reading informational text strategies.